This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello, welcome to another week's episode of Wellth Talks with myself, Garry Kelly, who is getting so much flack, and they're not making my life easy at all, but they are Pádraic, Máille and Niall at Leyden. Lads, delighted to have you back in the studio again this week.
Great to be back. I see you have the heat on full tilt.
Yeah.
We're coming into Christmas season
Garry, I'm
here.
delighted to see that you learned from our last podcast. You've actually prepared for this podcast. Yeah,
I have.
I see so many notes down there.
Yeah. I want to talk about appearance today.
Really?
And as you can see,
Sorry.
You're the one
Garry,
wearing the jackets, actually.
Gary, today's session we were meant to be talking about innovate or stagnate. Wasn't that it, Niall? No? You've missed a week. You got the wrong page, Garry.
Well, I want to talk about appearance, so we can do innovation next week. I want to talk about appearance because this gentleman beside you, who's pretty giddy, is wearing a nice Louis Copeland.
A Louis Vuitton bag.
I had someone into me yesterday, actually, who works with Louis Vuitton and Nike and Hennessy and all that, so it's in my head. Niall, you were in Louis Copeland.
I was.
And you got all suited and booted for your big talk that you had last week in front of 400 people.
How you do anything is how you do everything. And I think we talk about that a lot in Smácht. And it's true. Whether it's in business or in work or in life, I mean, small things are big things. And first impressions do last. I mean, isn't it?
But when you're up on stage in front of 400 people, they're listening to you, but they're watching your body language, the way you walk, the way you deliver yourself. But it's also how you present yourselves in what you're wearing. I mean, if you're up there wearing like Bermudas
Pajamas
and a Galway jersey or something like that, they're like that. Like you might be delivering the same content, but it's very hard for people to actually believe you and go with you on that journey and say, this fella is of substance and I should really be listening to what he's saying. Sadly, it seems to be a case of, if you do want to come across professional, you nearly have to dress professional.
I'll bring you back to, for a second, my youth. Back in 1976, born into a Hailing from Sligo. And the big piece in our house was polishing your shoes. It was something as simple as Sunday Mass, polishing your shoes. And I mean, it was fabulous. I always think back to the kitchen. There was 4 of us. And Saturday evening, and that was just a routine, and it was lovely, and it was brilliant, and it was just about dressing well, whatever it is you were dressing as, then going to football. But people, I think, and Pádraic, you might agree or disagree, form impressions very, very quickly. So, for example, if I'm out, which I am every other day, in a business or in a boardroom or in a kitchen or walking or talking or meeting with clients, and people that I mightn't have met before, they're forming their own opinions in terms of how does this guy talk, how does he walk, how does he speak. The credibility and experience is one thing, but I think first impressions, not just in terms of how you dress, but how you speak, how you act, how you think, how you respond, how you conduct yourself when no one is watching, how you turn up on the bad days.
I think it's a big point Niall makes, Garry. I think first appearances are very important in business, quite apart from the stage. I think in a selling scenario, Niall and I were very privileged to have a phenomenal man called Dr. Aidan Daly, lecturers in marketing 1,000 years ago. Aidan's still hale and hearty. Aidan would impress on you one rule: when you're meeting somebody in business, you dress like them, but err on the more formal side. There was huge wisdom in that. Tom Watson, the guy who founded IBM, had a uniform for everybody in IBM. Now, bear in mind, this was 40 odd years ago. And the uniform was very similar to Niall and probably myself. Was navy suit, white shirt, a grey tie with small little dots on it, black socks, black shoes. And that was non-negotiable. And I would often ask groups, why do you think Watson prescribed that? And the ladies were the same. It was very sober. I think it was navy suits, no flash, no jewellery, no rings, no makeup, that sort of stuff. Watson did his research. The people that the people were selling photocopiers to, they all dressed in navies, or most of them dressed in navy suits, white shirts. So in other words, in Connemara we say, Aithne and Kirog Ella, like attracts like, be like the people you're communicating with. That's kind of the rule, but err on the slightly more formal side. So I think it's really important. I was asking my young fellow Ogie, who works with Ernst Young in Chicago, I says, how many suits have you now? He says, Dad, I don't know anybody in our organisation who has a suit. They dress casually. They work from, they're not meeting clients most of the time. You wouldn't, he's in a tie. So they dress, if he arrived in a navy suit and a white shirt, he'd stick out like a sore thumb at a wedding, do you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important.
I remember appearance bit me 10 years ago. I was doing a gig for a university in Ireland, okay?
Is he boasting again? How many universities has he done gigs for at this
Plenty,
stage,
actually, if you're wondering.
This is a bit like the book story a few weeks ago.
I didn't see that in the notes he handed us around today. Yeah. Tell us about this university, Garry.
I was very proud of myself because the first time ever in my life that I bought a brand new car. So I bought a 151G car. Every car I had before that in my life was a car I had inherited from someone I knew or from a parent that I bought the car off or whatever. This was me deciding I want that car and I want it in this color and I want these features. Well, I was 2 years in business and I was now getting to own my own car that I chose. I was very, very happy. The person I was working with in the university, when we were heading out to the car park, I was heading off back there with my equipment. He turned and he said, "Is that your car?" I said, "Yeah." "That's a brand new car." I said, yeah. I just got it there last month from the garage. He goes, "Phew, I don't have a car like that." And do you know what? I never got a gig out of him again.
Oh,
wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you were almost a bit above him, or that was the perception.
Yeah. So it can trip you up as well. But anyway, such is life. 100% though, appearance is so important. And it's, for men, it's not only the clothes you're wearing. It's, again, I was meeting someone before who was a friend of mine and he picked up on how I wasn't clean shaven.
Yeah.
It's getting the haircut, it's whatever. But it is looking your best, because I think this is the thing. When you look good, you feel good.
100%.
100%. Like when you want to have a lazy day, for me, that's when I wear the real baggy top.
Meeting me at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning for our accountability session. Jim and a tracksuit and having a coffee.
We're like the roughest lads in Galway when we meet on a Monday morning in a hotel lobby.
But lads, it's not so long ago that we spoke about the Sabbath. And you guys were telling me that you're such holier than thou people on Sundays. How could you look rugged on a Sunday, on a Monday morning? What?
Yeah, correct.
I mean,
100% Pádraic. Well said. Because we missed Monday morning 7 o'clock session. We had legs day in the gym. But going back to first impressions and showing up, we were with a business there a couple of weeks ago, and it was a haulage business, one of Ireland's most prominent. I mean, there was dozens of fabulous new Scania lorries parked in the yard. And I mean, I just stood in awe for a couple of minutes, just looking at the surroundings. I knew before going into their office. The place, lads, was meticulous. The lorries were sparkling. It was just clean. And it kind of set the tone for the meeting, because I anticipated exactly what I was walking into. Competence, professionalism, punctuality, focus on the detail, the cups of coffee, the small things. And then I was in Dublin, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks before that, meeting what I thought and is a brilliant business, but everything was very, very, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing.
Yeah.
And the reason I was asked to come in was to try and put a little bit of Smácht and put a little bit of a plan together, which we're going to be working through over the next couple of months. But you're so right, Pádraic. I mean, first impressions do last. And we found them ourselves. And
But factory floors is a huge thing, because we go and do video shoots all around the island of Ireland. And we've been in factories where you'd want to replace your shoes after the day you're filming there. The place would be absolutely rotten. Even speaking to the staff there, they've no pride in what they're doing. And I give them a shout out, Bryody Bedding in Meath. We've been down to their factories a few times now this year. I swear you could actually eat your dinner off the floor. Now, these are 3 massive buildings where they're, making mattresses, they're doing the headboards, they're doing embroidery, they're doing the bases. Like, they do a lot of stuff as well for Centre Parks.
Speaking of Centre Parks, ethical tours, you were saying, I think you were up meeting Brendan Flanagan there, and you got over how well kept the premises were, the business were, the bikes were.
But it's coming from the owner taking pride in their business. And then that has a ripple effect. And then that affects the employees, because you're in a clean environment. You're taking pride in the equipment that you have. I mean, if you want to mention ethical tours, like the bikes that Brendan has, he's got the top bikes. I don't want to even mention the price of them, but like, they're the best e-bikes that's out there. But like, they look brand new, yet they're being used all the time, all over, different trials and on the Royal Canal and stuff like that. You don't want to go into a hotel room knowing that there was someone else sleeping in that room the night before. You know, you want to go in feeling like you're the first person to arrive into this room. Appearance of ourselves, but also how we present our business. And it really does change the mindset of the staff. Then I've seen it when I've been out doing video shoots. If the place is really kept clean, the products and everything like that, it makes such a difference for the staff working there. They then take pride. I've been to restaurants where if the toilets are manky, I wouldn't order off the menu. I'd get out of there.
I'm just thinking I'm heading to Dublin after this podcast and I'm saying hotel. All I'd be thinking about who's in the
don't believe, Garry, that nobody was in it the last time. Come here, I was really interesting, Niall. You mentioned about your mum and dad and shoes. I like that. I remember about 20 years ago there was a family wedding in Galway. A cousin of mine was getting married, and my mother, I arrived in on the Friday, and my mother said, "Get a new pair of shoes for the wedding tomorrow. Get rid of those ones that you're on, that you've on. They're terrible." And she says, "Go into Garrity's in Galway and get yourself." And I says, "You must be joking." And I went in and I went down Shop Street and I went into one of the high street shops, which I won't mention. And I looked around and I picked the one I wanted, which I'd always bought before. And I says, "Would you have those in a size 8? And there was a young one inside and she was doing her nails. She says, "If they're not up on the shelf, we don't have them." And I lost it, but I kept my composure. And I said, "What are you doing with your nails?" "Oh," she says, "I'm on a nail painting course and I'm doing flags. And this day I'm doing the map of America." And she showed it to me. Anyway, I left that shop. I says, the mother's right. I went over to Garrity's and I was cross. I was thick. My cousins were meeting down the Galway Arms. I was late. And I grew up with the Malones who own Garrity's. I grew up with Dennis and Aidan. Dennis is downstairs, Aidan's upstairs. So I went in and I was going upstairs where I knew the shoes were, and I was bitching. I was saying, the only reason I'm buying shoes in Garrity's is because the mother told me to. Aidan was busy, or Sid as I call him, as we called him as kids. He was busy with other customers and he knew he needed to switch me off. And he says, "Pádraic, it sounds like you need a new pair of shoes. What do you need them for?" And I says, "What do you mean, Sid? I just need a new pair of shoes. The mother is on my case. I need a new pair of shoes." No. Is it for work or pleasure?" I said, "Sid, it's for pleasure tomorrow, but then it's probably for work. Pádraic, what type of work exactly do you do?" I said, "Sid, my cardiologist, she wouldn't ask me so many invasive questions. I want to buy a pair of fucking No," he said, "it's quite important. Let's go buy." "What do you..." I said, "Sid, you know what I work at. I'm a trainer. I stand up in front of... How many people would you stand up in front of a year?" I don't know, Sid." Well, he says, "How many gigs a week?" In those days, I was on the floor about 4 times a week. He said, "Pádraic, that could be 150 times a year you appear on a stage." And for the first time I was saying, "Yeah, where's this going, Sid?" And Pádraic, he said, "Before we get to the shoes, who's your main competitor in your business?" And now I said, "Sid, you're really getting down my throat at this stage." All I wanted was down for a few pints, you see. And he says, "No," I says,
you should have sent him on a nail course.
Well, wait a minute. He said, "I know your greatest competitor." And he named a Galway person. And I said, "Him." I said, "That guy lacks so much energy."
Oh, no, he
may be academic and he may know his stuff and he knows the jargon, but I have infinitely more. And Sid burst out laughing. So he said, "I want you to try these shoes on." And he walked over, and I think they were called John Earl shoes. And I immediately took the beautiful leather hand-stitched shoe and I turned it over. And I saw €150. And I said, "Sid, €150 for a pair of shoes. I can get them for €74 across in the shop across the way." And he said, "Yeah, Pádraic, that may well be true. But I'm going to give you 3 reasons now to buy those shoes." So I was walking around in the shoes around the shop. He says, "Number 1, you're in business. You stand in front of maybe 2,000 people or more every year." Now he said, "Would many of those be women?" And I said, "Maybe 40%. So he said, "A good 1,000 of those are women." He said, "A fella may never notice your shoes, but every single girl that ever looks up on that stage will notice your shoes." And I was saying, "Yeah, what's the story?" He said, "You may never win business because of your shoes, but you could lose business." I tell you, lads and listeners, I had those shoes bought then, but I didn't tell Sid. And then he went on. He said, "The reason you're so good at what you do is," he said, "your energy." He said, "You're the same as the rest." He says, "Your energy is critical." And he said, you're standing for 4 to 5 hours a day. And then he put in a great one. He said, that's why every retailer in Galway buys these shoes. And I said, why, Sid? Because he said, your feet are connected to 200 nerve endings in your body. When you're standing in good shoes, you have infinitely more energy. I absolutely had the shoes bought. And by the way, he said, how many of those shoes have you, when was the last time you bought a pair of those shoes in that shop across the road? I said, Sid, it's probably the 3rd time this year. So he didn't even have to tell me the value thing. I said, okay, Sid, my cousins are down the Galway Arms. Look, will you give me the shoes? And he gave me a good discount. And I was walking outside Garrity's shop. And he says, come here a sec, Pádraic. And I says, I'm dead late. I'm awful late. No, Pádraic, he says, come here. He says, put up your shoe. And Sid and and this was back in the time when men didn't touch each other or hold each other. So I said, Sid, geez, I had to put my hand up there. And he had a bit of sandpaper and he started sanding my new shoes. Outside Garrity's shop. And people were stopping, looking at us. And he says, Pádraic, give me the other one. And he said, I said, Sid, what are you doing? He said, I don't want you to slip going over O'Brien's Bridge. And then he left me with this fantastic line. He said, the 2 most important things you ever buy in life is a good mattress and a good pair of shoes. And I said, why is that, Sid? Because, Pádraic, when you think about it, you're always either getting in or out of the other. Now, was that a sale in appearance? Was it?
That is
brilliant.
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Who brought up shoes? Sunday
No,
Mass shoes.
you brought up shoes. And Niall, I was wondering about that, and I didn't like to say it. Could that be why Sligo haven't won in All Ireland in I don't know how many years? Because they go with lovely polished shoes to the matches.
I like to get them dirty.
We're a 50-year anniversary, 1975, for all the Mayo people out there. We had Charlotte Burns in Sligo there recently, and again, dressed to impress.
Yeah,
again, we talked about on just first impressions. He
does.
The Gaeilge. We've seen him in Croke Park, obviously. We lost to Armagh last year, but I mean, that's just come into my head because Dad's involved. He's up around there in Sligo this year, but it goes back to shoes and appearance, and that's actually a brilliant story.
Yeah,
there was a story as well about Sylvie. Told you a story before.
The great Sylvie Nealon, who we speak a lot about in this programme, a great friend of Smácht. Sylvie's background is as a farmer. And he would say, I will always look at a farm. And if I see the gates neatly closed and if I see the tractors neatly parked, so I know that's a profitable farm. But if I see it where it's ragged or untidy, and Niall has given a whole load of examples, that's so true, whether it's our physical appearance or whether it's the appearance of our shop or our farm or even our house. Really, really important. It does impact everything.
Yeah, absolutely. What you wear sets your day. If you're...
You're going to have to start practicing what you preach.
We all can't, every 2 weeks.
I say in jest. Continue, Captain.
Well, you know what? Seeing we're talking about Louis Copeland, or Anthony Ryans, or Garrity's, or whoever we speak about, our Handleys here, absolutely. And we've all bought clothes in all of those shops. You know, a lot of people talk about the price. I think the price is less important than the value. Yeah. I bought a suit in Louis Copeland's before COVID for my son's wedding. And I spent an awful lot of money on it at the time. I have worn that suit 50 times at gigs, at weddings. It has paid for itself over and over and over again. I would say go out and don't just buy good suits, buy good accessories. I'm showing off here. Invest in a really decent pair of cufflinks, yeah? Invest in a good belt. Those are the things. A good belt, good cufflinks can make an ordinary suit look $100,000, so it can.
Actually, I do need to get a proper belt.
Sort them out like the bag afterwards. We'll give him a proper belt.
Because I've been slimming up and losing so much weight, Definitely food for thought for all genders. Just it does make such a difference. The appearance of how we dress, how we look makes a change then on how we feel, but also in terms of the look of our business, our products, and so on. It has a ripple positive effect for everyone. So, okay, I'm off to do a little bit of shopping this weekend. Yeah,
we're all going to go shopping this weekend.
If you want to throw a few bob on the counter for me, feel free. And check out what I'm wearing next week.
Brilliant.
I look forward to it, Garry.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Wellth Talks, and please do continue to follow us on whatever social media platform you're listening to, or whatever social media platform you follow us on, or whatever podcast streaming platform you are listening to us on. And again, spread the word, share this episode with someone who you think needs a good laugh this weekend, and we look forward to joining us again next Friday.
This is a GK Media podcast.